a way around the mess with subprime loans. Don't make them. The nation's largest savings and loan going that route hours ago. Washington Mutual saying that it is discontinuing all remaining lending through its subprime mortgage channel, all of it. That is 190 of 336 home loan centers and 2,600 jobs gone. Just like that. We'll talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, only they took mom and dad out for good measure. WAMU throwing a whammy at subprime by essentially saying, if in doubt, throw it all out. To what end? Look, I know Washington Mutual had to set aside more than expected for loan losses, but I also know that most loans are not losses at WAMU or any other lender. The vast majority of loans in this country are being paid on time, month in and month out in this country. Subprime has a lousy image, but a fairly good record. Subprime got young couples in homes, and now a major lender is saying, you just ain't worth the fuss trying to keep putting you in homes. Never mind, most met their obligations. And as of this date, more than 87% continue to make their obligations. I bet you didn't know that, did you? No, you hear about the 13% having problems, not the 87% not having problems. So the minority has ruined it for the majority. The real deal? This really stinks. And it almost leaves me speechless. I apologize for my voice. Well, I think a lot of good people just got a lousy deal today on both ends of the deal. So what is the deal? Time to ask some very smart folks. Jonathan Honig, Tracy Burns, and Peter Schiff, and Fox Business senior economist Mark Lieberman. Mark, I want to go to you first because you have an interesting connection.
Yes, I used to work for Washington Mutual. I left Washington Mutual in August, and I should disclose that I do own stock in Washington Mutual. I'm familiar with the operations there.
Did you work in the loan servicing area?
I worked in corporate credit as an economic analyst, so I was familiar with the operations.
So when you were there, they were firing on all cylinders. See what happened when you leave.
Exactly.
So, all right, now what do you make of this move? If in doubt, just get out.
Well, it is very serious, and you did point out that 13%, only 13% of subprime borrowers are not making their payments on time. But I should point out that that is also about more than twice the average for prime borrowers. So it is pretty significant that 13%, a 13% delinquency rate.
But then throw out everything?
There's a certain irony to what Washington Mutual announced today, because earlier this morning we heard the National Association of Realtors say that existing home sales are going to rebound next year. But I think what Washington Mutual did, and there's a basic tenet of bank credit, banks don't fail because of credit. Credit issues. Banks fail because of liquidity issues. And what Washington Mutual said today was, in effect, that it was concerned about its liquidity and being able to meet the obligations of its depositors. All right,
not so much the lending side of the operation. All right, Jonathan Honig, here's what worries me about the message being sent here. 13% might be double the average for prime loans, but 87%, as I said, of these even so-called risky loans are being paid on time, month in and month out. So are you penalizing the vast, overwhelming majority who are meeting their obligations and sending a signal to those who probably could in the future as well, you're just not worth it?
Well, Neil, I think the reason that they're getting out of the subprime business is not because the subprime business is bad or that the risk is so big, but because the regulatory risk has gotten so big. I mean, there is a let's string up the lenders mentality out there among dozens and dozens of politicians, every presidential candidate on both sides of the aisle. So obviously they're not going to stop making loans, but I think they're cutting out of this business, which has a real regulatory risk right now, and I don't blame them.
All right. They probably read the writing on the wall, Tracy. I don't blame them either. I can understand the method to it. I'm just saddened by it.
Well, yeah, because these loans have, as you said, helped a lot of people. I mean, I got one. I know John Rutledge will be the first person to say that he needed one in the beginning. And this is not unlike, to me, this whole, when Katrina hit, the insurers came, decided we're not going to insure any coastal properties anymore. So everyone's just running because they're scared. But to Mark's point, why then are foreign investors dumping money back in? Because maybe they see the bottom in all this? I almost feel like this is a little too late on Washington Mutual's part.
Well, Peter, that brings back to one. I know you don't readily agree with this, but they're closing the barn doors now, and all the suspect animals have left. So what good does this do?
Well, you know, there's a lot more shoes to drop here. You know, this is not anywhere near the bottom of what's happening. And, you know, unfortunately with subprime, you know, there was no baby to begin with. It's all bathwater. These loans never should have existed.
No, it isn't.
No, they never should have made loans.
87% are being paid on time.
Now.
You're assuming, no. You are assuming that everyone is a delinquent loser.
No, I'm telling you that
close to 9 out of 10 clearly are not.
Neil, I'm telling you that the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of these subprime loans have not even reset yet. Wait till you see what the default rate would be next year and the year after that. But before it was over, better than half of these loans would be in default.
Well, you don't know that for sure, Peter.
Yes, I do.
You're basing this on adjustments that are coming up, that the vast majority won't be able to handle these adjustments.
They won't. Neil.
Peter, stop, because I want to be clear on this. We have had 2 adjustment waves since this whole crisis began. And the overwhelming majority of these borrowers have successfully met those adjustments. Yeah. You have the cynical view, shared by many, that they won't be able to in the future. I disagree with you. Prove me wrong.
Well, not only won't they be able to because of the higher resets, but these properties are losing value. They're not going to want to make payments on mortgages that well exceed the value of these homes.
So they're less likely to make payments than someone who is a little bit more stable?
Well, you see, the prime loans are going to default too. It's not just, you know, people with bad credit that aren't going to want to make mortgage payments on houses that are worth 20 or 30% less than their mortgage.
Peter, I love you dearly. I could not disagree with you more. Now, Mark, you used to work there, and my concern is the message being sent here. Look, we know you aren't the problem, but your business is a problem, and you are not attractive to us anymore. That's what I'm worried is going to be the signal. So to young, up-and-coming people like Tracy in her heyday looking to get into this and get in a home, those opportunities won't be provided anymore.
Well, it wasn't just that the opportunities won't be provided, it's the type of opportunity was provided. I mean, the loans were somewhat exotic. Non-traditional is the phrase that's being bandied about. These 228 mortgages, 327, which meant they had a fixed-rate loan for a couple of years, and then...
And for the vast majority, they worked.
Until the adjustment period. We're going to have 500,000 loans adjusting next year.
What percentage of those who could potentially fail on that are the percentage of all loans outstanding?
It's anybody's guess.
Well,
because we are going to see...
Riddle me this, Einstein. The guess that I've heard is no more than 5% of all loans outstanding would be affected by this so-called adjustment phase. I'm throwing in good with risky, prime with subprime. That tells me 95% of people are meeting their obligations. So for the 5% who are not, we're saying a pox on you.
If you're throwing 5% on top of the 13% that are in arrears today, you're looking at a default rate of 18%?
Total. No. I'm looking at the aggregate. The aggregate is 5%.
No, I can't see that happening, not as we see the contagion that's coming from the housing sector.
You're waiting for contagion. All right. You're waiting for contagion.
All
right. Jonathan Honig, I don't see that contagion. I think if you keep mentioning contagion, you'll be damn disappointed until you see it. Now, I don't know. I just worry about the message sent by a company either facing regulatory hassles or congressmen breathing down their throats that says it ain't worth it.
Well, of course, Neil, and the big lenders are damned if they do and damned if they don't. They're damned if they don't lend to poor people with terrible credit histories, and when they do make those loans, they're damned as well. I think the good news is that the stock, although it's down sharply after hours, it's actually holding above that 1675 low it hit earlier in November. So the fact the stock is falling on bad news is expected, but it's not making new lows. That's actually a bullish technical sign moving forward.
You're nodding.
Yeah, I think it's good news for the stock, actually. But what I don't understand is Peter's logic. Yes, yeah, for your sake. Peter's logic that just because the value of my property might not be as high as it was when I started, I'm going to stop making my mortgage payments, and therefore my children and I will be on the street.
Well, you won't be on the street, but remember, the main reason... Why would I do that? I mean, it doesn't even matter. The main reason that people were willing to have such staggeringly high mortgage payments relative to their income was because they were operating under the delusion that they were making an investment, that their house was going to appreciate, and so it was worth it. But once you start to see that your house is worth hundreds of thousands less than you paid, why struggle to make a mortgage payment when you can rent something just as nice for a lot less money?
I love you dearly. Like I said, I think you're a genius, as I do Mark Lieberman. I'm telling you, though, You are so wrong on this. You have so overstated the problem.
No, I haven't.
And a year, here, riddle me this, Batman. A year from now, when I have you back and the medication isn't talking, I will prove you wrong.
But, Neil,
and if I'm wrong, I will not have you back.
Neil, if you're right, there are a lot. You can get rich buying up all these cheap mortgages.
Well, we'll see about that,
If you
Mr.
really
Schmutty,
think people are going to make good on this debt.
Is WAMU went to hell as soon as Mark left. That I do know. But we'll see what happens. Guys, I want to thank you all. Meanwhile, what the heck is going on down under? Australians considering a $5,000 tax on anyone considering having a baby. These are the same folks who are seriously considering a fat tax on overweight airline passengers. But the weighty issue here is the taxes themselves, clearly meant to disincentivize behavior, like having a child or going on a plane if you're fat. Clearly, the goofy proponents of these goofy ideas get this much. If you want to disincentivize behavior, try taxing that behavior. So, by extension, if we hike taxes on the rich or even near rich, are we disincentivizing their willingness to spend? Jonathan Hoenig, Tracy Burns, Peter Schiff. Peter, what do you think of that?
Well, there's an old economic truism that you get less of what you tax and you get more of what you subsidize. And obviously, the Australians are figuring that out. But certainly, it applies to us. Unfortunately, in America, what do we tax? We tax hard work. We have an income tax. We have a capital gains tax. We tax people for investing money, for taking risks, for working harder. Look what we subsidize. We subsidize, borrowing money to consume. We subsidize people to buy houses. Is it no wonder we got too many people overpaying for houses because we gave people a subsidy to consume? So
you would be against taxing people who want to have a baby?
Well, I'm against taxes in general, right. But I don't like where government tries to influence behavior. Taxes should raise revenue. The government should not be trying to micromanage the economy through tax policy. They should just raise taxes to support the general defense of the country and to do what governments do, which is very minimal, but they should do it in the most invasive way. They should just have a national sales tax or value-added tax and leave it at that.
Jonathan, there's a lot to what Peter just said there. And my big issue is, if the genie's out of the bottle and you tax hike proponents are saying, not you, but are saying, look, we know we can disincentivize behavior by taxing it, then by extension, are they acknowledging that by hiking taxes on the well-to-do, you'll achieve the same thing?
Well, Neil, I think, to be honest, a lot of the proponents of tax hikes kind of couch it in this altruist notion that somehow the rich earn their rich on the backs of the poor. So a tax hike is really an opportunity for them to kind of give back. But to your point about disincentivizing anything, I mean, the whole notion of this tax on having kids is to disincentivize having kids. And that's what the Greens really want. The Greens want to reduce human population. They see humans as being essentially trespassing on the earth. So their goal is the end of humans. And that's why these types of proposals are becoming more common worldwide.
Trace?
It's Looney Tunes. I mean, truthfully, raising children is taxing enough. You don't need to charge me for it, quite frankly. But I think if you want to tax and you want to disincentivize, why don't you tax tobacco? We are the only country in the world that doesn't have an excise tax on tobacco. You want to stop people from smoking? I mean, some countries it's upwards of 50%.
Well, we do it worse. We subsidize tobacco farmers.
Yeah, but why are we taxing the wealthy? Why are we taxing people that go to work every day and work really, really hard? Why are we thinking about raising the capital gains tax?
We shouldn't be taxing.
Tracy, why is having a kid or smoking a cigarette or having a 40-ounce
Please don't compare having a child to having a cigarette.
Yeah, well, but why do we specify, to Peter's point, why do we specify these different activities and say, well, if you want to smoke, well, we're going to tax that. If you want to drive,
well, by the way, this idea was first pushed in China. And last time I checked, they have a few people in China, so it obviously didn't work too well. But, Peter, here's what I worry about. Because away from the tax on people who are fat, away from the tax on people who might be looking at a baby, is this notion that you raise taxes, you hurt that behavior. That is an important acknowledgement that not a single politician espousing tax hikes has admitted.
Of course. I mean, that's what happens. I mean, people respond to the incentives that they're given, the carrots and the sticks. And, if you punish people for working harder, as you tax income, people have an incentive to work less. The higher the taxes go, the greater the preference will be for leisure. And on the other side, if you start giving people money not to work, you have welfare payments, unemployment payments. If people can earn money by doing nothing, your government is going to encourage that behavior as well.
But, Neil, I don't think they realize what they're going to do to the stock market if they get rid of the capital gains and the dividend tax now that is lower at 15%. Because you saw the flow of money into assets that gave dividends and that created capital gains when these laws were put into place. You will now see the flow of money out if they raise these rates.
Well, I'll tell you what, you won't even feel like making babies.
Yeah, the important thing, though, is the government has to stop spending. That's the source of the problem. It's all the government spending. So if they don't cut our taxes or if they don't raise our taxes, but they spend more and just borrow or print the difference, we still get hurt.
Wise words all. Tomorrow is Fed.